especially like MDMA gives you a chance to see you from the way spirit or way source sees you, from a higher level of consciousness, where you can see the beauty of your soul. Those hurts and those wounds are really not you, but they help you with your character development, maybe on this earth walk.
There's a lot of storylines that are not helpful, and there's storylines around other people and how they've hurt you. And so this allows you to really go in and just release those things, see them, but release them. So you're not in that circuitous loop of hearing the same stories over and over and over. So it is a very miraculous way of going about working through your stuff. Welcome to another edition of Psychedelic Sages, where we provide intuitive insights, truth bust, and service watchdogs and guides for topics around spiritual medicines, more commonly referred to as psychedelics. Welcome to another episode of Psychedelic Sages. I'm Beth Bell.
I'm Stephanie Salt.
And we're here today to talk about an interesting clip that's actually from 10, 12 years ago. It aired on CNN, and it shows that we've actually been in research on some psychedelics for many, many years. But let's jump right into the clip and hear what they have to say.
They're the drugs once associated with hippies in the 1960s. LSD, hallucinogenic mushrooms, once feared as a one-way ticket to insanity, now being discussed as real medicine to treat real problems.
Well, I am a firm believer. I've seen it work in many people.
Rick Doblin imagines a day when patients will be able to go to their doctor's offices for their doses of LSD or ecstasy pills.
I think eventually there will be psychedelic clinics regulated by FDA with people who are specially trained to administer the psychedelics, and people will come to them for medical purposes or for rites of passage in their life or personal growth.
Doblin comes with credentials. He's got a PhD from Harvard in public policy and has spent years studying psychedelics.
Proving that there is a convention for practically everything, researchers from around the world have come to San Jose, California to talk about psychedelic drugs. Here at the Holiday Inn, they're sharing stories about those drugs and their hope that one day they will become a regular part of medicine.
All right. So I think we have Rick Doblin to owe a lot of our show to as well, because it is really his work that has really spearheaded for a lot of these companies that are now blossoming to do this research.
It's amazing his lens into the future. Well, really into the now, which is exactly what is happening. We're going to have these clinics.
And I think it's his perseverance and persistence over all these years with a lot of people not accepting. And let's not ignore that a lot of these are still class 1 felony drugs. And so to bring these to the market after everything that happened in the 70s, and, we saw the clip of, Woodstock and the worst case scenarios of how, maybe not the worst case, but scenarios where the medicines are not used for a sacred purpose of awakening and expanding of consciousness and or releasing of trauma. So Rick's really been on this for a long time. And we'll hear a little bit more in the clip as to, again, 10 plus years ago, what they were up to.
Here at the conference, we found Sarah Huntley, who says she was abused emotionally and physically as a child.
It made me feel worthless most of the time, and that I was a burden to that member of my family, and that I wasn't really worth that burden.
She says the abuse stripped her of self-confidence. Then, as a 17-year-old high school student, she started taking the drug ecstasy, scientifically known as MDMA.
MDMA, or ecstasy, you see right here, was developed in the early 20th century as a possible appetite suppressant. Of course, today, people use it for its hallucinogenic effects. Users say it can heighten their senses and lower their inhibitions.
It seems like the color contrast is...
Now 23, Sarah says MDMA helped get her life back.
Using the MDMA helped ease my sense of fear and defensiveness.
They talk about being happy.
Psychiatrist Michael Mithofer has never examined Sarah, but believes psychedelics hold tremendous promise. Through a study approved by the Food and Drug Administration, he's been administering MDMA to patients with post-traumatic stress disorder.
As a doctor, what made you think that psychedelics could be helpful?
Well, we know that the treatment of PTSD involves revisiting the trauma in a therapeutic session. So our idea is that MDMA may bring people into kind of an optimal zone of arousal. where they can connect with their feelings, but they aren't going to be overwhelmed by fear.
I love that they're talking about really helping people to release their feelings and see these situations, but not be overwhelmed by them on the medicines. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. Especially with MDMA, I think it has tremendous healing properties and potentials. And I just believe that, sometimes it's very difficult to see ourselves within our own journey. And people spend so many years and years just discussing their story over and over and over again, but never really seeing how it fits in the larger timeline of who they are and who they're evolving to. So I just think that this, especially like MDMA, gives you a chance to see you from the way spirit or way source sees you, from a higher level of consciousness, where you can see the beauty of your soul. You can see the beauty of your trauma. You can see some of the lessons maybe from past lives that are interacting and influencing some of the maybe not so good decisions that you made then. And now you have realizations of those things, and how that those hurts and those wounds are really not you, but they help you with your character development, maybe on this earth walk. So you just get to see so many different parts of yourselves, selves from a higher perspective. And that's what the medicine allows you to do.
Well, and I think just to add to that, it is about these storylines that get so ingrained in our default mode network. And they're storylines that oftentimes are not serving us. Look, if it's something in our default mode network that says the stove is hot, and if you touch it, that's something you want to keep, because you don't want to have to repeat and learn that. There's a lot of storylines that are not helpful. And there's storylines around other people and how they've hurt you. And so this allows you to really go in and just release those things, see them, but release them. So you're not in that circuitous loop of hearing the same stories over and over and over. So it is a very miraculous way of going about working through your stuff.
It's so true. People say, well, let it go. But nobody tells you how to do that. And especially with veterans that have been through war trauma, through violence, and you tell them to let it go, but how do you let go of the loop?
Mm-hmm.
Constant mental loop that keeps going around and around, and the flashbacks and that type of thing. And to see the work now that's being done with veterans, and to see the actual healing of so many of the war trauma soldiers, I just think is just an amazing pat on the back to the psychedelics.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, let's take a listen, because there's a little bit more on this clip.
The key is matching the drug with the problem. Psilocybin, found in certain mushrooms, might be used to treat anxiety related to terminal illness. The same for LSD.
It can vary according to what issues they're working with, how much denial they have, but we would like to have psychiatrists and psychotherapists have access to a whole tool chest of psychedelics that they can use at appropriate times.
But some doctors question whether psychedelics are ever appropriate. Stanford psychiatrist David Spiegel says there's no scientific literature yet to back up any positive claims.
The key issue in the treatments of this disorder is teaching people how to access their memories and feelings about the trauma in a controlled way. And psychedelics are anything but a controlled experience. So
for now, that's the mainstream medical consensus.
Maybe if you get pure MDMA.
But supporters here hope that over time, psychedelics will be seen less as a bad trip and more as legitimate medicine. Dan Simon, CNN, San Jose, California.
Okay, so we've seen some of the other side of the medical community, and I would be curious if we were to ask that gentleman today, 10 years later, what his thoughts are, because while there may not have been a lot of clinical papers at that time and clinical research, there certainly is now, and there is just a lot of experiences that have been in, I would say, controlled setting, and if nothing else, sacred ceremonies.
So true. I think what we're looking at, though, we're looking at cure versus Band-Aid. And I think that's been what we've done on depression, on PTSD. We give the Band-Aid, some of the very addictive drugs that really don't treat the cause. And I think getting to the root of the problem is where medicine is going. What is the root of some of these diseases, psychologically and spiritually? And I think we're going back to that. which is what the ancients were doing with the medicines in the first place. So yes, it's interesting to see the stayed view of where psychedelics have been stuck for the over 30 years, and where they're actually, where we're coming into being that there are now. But I'm just so thrilled that we're getting cures.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it doesn't take years and years of talk therapy. This is something that I think can streamline, in some cases, 3 to 10 years of therapy in a session with MDMA or other psychedelics that have this ability to really open your heart, see things differently, and help you release the trauma that you've experienced.
Yes. And the whole celebration of the healing aspect of these medicine, where you're not looped back into the old experience, I think is just, I think it's the wave of the Aquarian age.
Yes. All right. Well, this was a great clip. And in the notes below, we'll put information on MAPS, which is the organization, the nonprofit organization that Rick Doblin has started many years ago and is thriving now and is well sought after by many pharmaceutical psychedelic companies as they are leading the way with bringing psychedelics to the market, FDA approved. Thanks for tuning into this episode. If you like what you hear, please give us a thumbs up below and hit the bell and be the first to receive updates. Visit our Patreon site, Psychedelic Sages, for more in-depth information.